Introduction and background. Our purpose is to define obesity, first of all, in the adult and child population of the United States. Then we will examine the causes, prevalence, and demographics of childhood obesity, the general risk factors, complications, and health consequences that occur when the syndrome persists well into adulthood. We will investigate the occurrence of childhood obesity in California's indigenous American Indian peoples, and finally analyze from multiple agencies the primary causes, and that those appear to be diet, lack of physical activity, socioeconomics, and possibly even genetic predisposition. Our literature review covered many subtopics, primarily childhood obesity facts, the definition of obesity. We started out with the adult population, and then we drilled down into the definition of childhood obesity, which is a little different. We looked at immediate and long-term effects, the causes as in genetic, behavioral, and environmental, and obesity prevalence in poor and underserved populations. Obesity for all age groups, as the primary definition, is simply defined as the result of a positive caloric imbalance. In other words, too many calories taken in without an equivalent or excess of calories burned by an effective metabolism and or by physical activity. So the BMI is an indirect measurement of body fat, and it has been shown to compare to other more exact methodologies used in research and sports-related studies. BMI is actually weight in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. The BMI in adults stratifies out to normal, overweight, and obese, and finally extremely obese. So normal would be a number, BMI number of 18.5 to 24.9. Someone who is considered overweight will have a BMI of 25 to 29.9. Obesity is considered to be the number 30 to 39.9, and extreme obesity is 40 and above. Now this is in the adult population. Lor will now give us a definition of obesity in the childhood population, and she will define that for us.
A definition for childhood obesity can be found on the Center for Disease Control's site, Childhood Obesity Facts, and includes the reasons why overweight and obesity are measured differently in children than adults. The CDC notes that for children and teens, BMI is age and sex specific and is often referred to as BMI for age, as it is plotted over the age growth chart of a healthy reference population for either gender. The results are shown as a percentile ranking. The CDC further explains that the reasons BMI is calculated differently in children is that the amount of body fat changes with age as muscle mass increases, and the amount of body fat is different in girls than in boys. Childhood obesity has been on the rise, and current measurements indicate that the rate has more than doubled in children and tripled in adolescents in the past 30 years. The causes of obesity are inactivity, unhealthy diet and eating habits, environmental factors, psychological factors, depression, and hypothyroidism, and a lack of sleep. To prevent these from occurring, you can teach your kids about healthy eating, give them plenty of vegetables, encourage them to drink more water, and limit the time that they spend in front of the TV, and increase physical activity.
Building on the definition of obesity, we start here with a healthy child, and this is basically how children begin this vicious cycle of obesity. They become immobile, they are inactive in physical activities, and then it starts with mild obesity, increased immobility, and then increased obesity, and so forth, and then into adulthood is obesity as well. And this picture also shows increased immobility and being unable to do things on your own. And the next slide that we have is a slide that shows the complications of obesity, which include pulmonary disease, gallbladder disease, cancer, low self-esteem, depression, high blood pressure, and that's just to name a few that can affect your life. And the research question and hypothesis that we have are that for our research questions, we wanted to know if children in California's American Indian population have higher rates of obesity than children in other groups. We speculated whether or not they are at higher risk for obesity than other groups. We strove to uncover identifiable causes, and we wanted to know what other contributing factors might place them in this category. And our null hypothesis, therefore, was constructed in such in the state of California, there is no statistically significant difference in the incidence of childhood obesity in American Indian children versus non-American Indian children. And our alternative hypothesis was that in the state of California, there is a statistically significant difference in the incidence of obesity in children who are American Indian versus non-American Indian children. And Arvin will go over the results and conclusions.
So I'll be focusing on the methodology part of our project. The study was conducted by first asking various questions regarding childhood obesity in the American population, then further inquiring as to the status of American Indian children or whether or not they fit into this category. We had a peer-reviewed literature which was reviewed as noted, followed by data collected from the California Health and Interview Service, which is also called CHIS. The target population was American Indian children in the state of California compared to the non-American Indian children. Some of the results we found were a total of 3,516 people were surveyed. 89 people indicated that the question was not applicable, leaving a subtotal of 3,427 respondents. There is a large number of self-reported American Indians in California that do not exercise daily. In our discussion, our findings from the CHIS database were not consistent with the literature we've reviewed. Therefore, our null hypothesis stands as we were unable to unequally show that American Indian children in the state of California have higher obesity rates than children in other groups, even though the CDC shows that nationally minority children of lower income, especially Hispanics, are more obese. As a conclusion, we came to obesity, particularly in children, represents a major public health concern. And as results, we encourage parents to focus more on children, encourage healthy eating habits, activity, and lower their fast food intake,